Good afternoon, everybody. May I have the appearances, please, for the prosecution?
Good afternoon, Your Honors. Joanna Corner, Ann Sutherland, Michael McVicker, Nicholas Kumjian, and Ruth Carper for the prosecution.
Thank you. And for the defense?
Good afternoon, Your Honors. John Stakić, Daniel Cirkovic, and Branko Lukic for the defense.
Thank you. May I ask you, Dr. Stakić, can you follow the proceedings in a language you understand?
Good afternoon, Your Honors. Yes, I can. I can follow the proceedings in a language I understand.
Thank you. You may be seated. Before I start with the oral presentation of this judgment, I want, on behalf of the entire bench, all those having assisted us since the start of this trial, extend our thanks. Without the help of translators, interpreters, secretaries, in short, all actors behind the scenes, always ready to give us a helping hand, we would not have reached the point where we are today. Especially when working with a deluge of documents, transcripts, video and audio tapes, we learned how important the work of the case managers, Ruth Carper for the prosecution, Danilo Cirkovic for the defense, and coordinating all this on behalf of the registry, Charlotte Daron as the then acting court deputy. Our heartfelt thanks go to the team of legal officers working especially the last month extremely hard to prepare with us a judgment as accurate as possible. This is Courtney Massa, Nina Jürgensen, Lucia Catani, Philip Digios, and temporarily Coralie Colson. Let me now turn to the summary of the trial chamber's judgment in the case Prosecutor versus Dr. Milomir Stakić. I have to stress that this summary forms no part of the final judgment, which will be delivered immediately. The only authoritative account of the trial chamber's findings and of its reasons for those findings is to be found in the written judgment. The trial chamber wishes to emphasize that this is not a case against the Serbs collectively or against an individual because of his Serb ethnicity, but rather a case in which the trial chamber, based on the charges set out by the prosecution in the Fourth Amendment indictment, had to decide whether Dr. Stakić is to be held individually criminally responsible for the alleged crimes. This judgment, especially since it's pronounced under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations, should never be misunderstood as directed against one of the warring parties or ethnicities at the relevant time. The trial chamber is aware that crimes of similar gravity were committed in the Municipality of Prijedor and beyond by and against members of all three main ethnicities. Following the principle of equality before the law, this tribunal and domestic courts will therefore continue to prosecute and try these other perpetrators as well. A judgment should not serve as a pretext for reopening of old wounds. Its purpose is to present reliable, factual findings and thereby contribute to reconciliation and bringing people back to a state of peaceful coexistence. The trial of the accused on the allegations set out in the indictment began on 16th of April 2002 and concluded on 15th April 2003 after 150 days of hearings. Dr. Stakić faces charge of genocide, or alternatively complicity in genocide, murder as a violation of the laws, customs of war, and the following crimes against humanity: murder, extermination, persecutions, deportation, and other inhumane acts, here forcible transfer, in relation to events that took place in the Municipality of Prijedor between April and September 1992. Let me start with this. Despite the comprehensive pattern of atrocities against non-Serbs in Prijedor in 1992, which has been proved beyond reasonable doubt, and without distracting from its gravity, the trial chamber has not found this case to be a case of genocide. Rather, it is a serious case of persecutions, extermination, and deportation. The trial chamber heard 37 live prosecution witnesses and admitted 19 witness statements pursuant to Rule 92 bis. Prosecution called 3 expert witnesses. The chamber itself called 6 witnesses proprio motu and ordered the prosecution to appoint 2 experts. The trial chamber heard 38 live defense witnesses and admitted 7 Rule 92 bis statements and 1 Rule 94 bis report. The defense called 2 live expert witnesses and introduced another report of an expert. A total of 1,448 exhibits were admitted into evidence. 150 days of hearings are reflected on 15,337 pages of transcript. The factual findings can be summarized relatively briefly, particularly in the light of the fact that previous judgments of this tribunal have already described the overall situation in Prijedor, and more specifically the Marska, Karatam and Ternopolje camps. What follows is an overview of the scope of all the crimes committed at the relevant time, that is from April 1992 to September 1992. On the 7th of January 1992, the Serbian members of the Prijedor Municipal Assembly and the presidents of the local municipal boards of the Serbian Democratic Party, SDS, proclaimed a parallel assembly of the Serbian people of the Municipality of Prijedor. Dr. Milomir Stakić, a physician, was elected president of this assembly. 10 days later, in a decision signed by Dr. Stakić, the assembly endorsed, quote, joining the Serb territories of the Municipality of Prijedor to the autonomous region of Bosnia-Krajina, end of quote. By the end of April 1992, a number of clandestine Serbian police stations had been created in the municipality, and more than 1,500 armed men were ready to take power. During the night from 21 to 30 of April 1992, the SDS-led forcible takeover of power took place. Legitimate central authorities were replaced by SDS or SDS loyal personnel. First and foremost, Dr. Stakić replaced the freely elected president of the Municipal Assembly, Professor Stakić. The takeover in the Municipality of Prijedor was an illegal coup d'etat, which had been planned and coordinated for months and which had as its final goal the creation of a pure Serbian municipality. The plans were never hidden and were implemented through coordinated action by the police, army and politicians. One of the main figures was Dr. Stakić, who was by then playing the leading role in the political life of the municipality. Shortly after the takeover, the Municipal People's or National Defense Council started meeting in a new composition presided over by Dr. Stakić in his capacity as president of the post-takeover Municipal Assembly. On 20 May 1992, the Municipal Assembly was replaced by the crisis staff of Prijedor, later known as War Presidency, whose membership was almost identical to that of the People's Defense Council, including Dr. Stakić as its president. The crisis staff met very frequently in the period immediately after the takeover and adopted numerous decisions, orders, and other enactments. Civilian life in Prijedor was transformed in a myriad ways after the takeover. There was a marked increase in the military presence in the town, and a propaganda war against non-Serbs was launched. According to a decision of the crisis staff, armed attacks were launched against the non-Serb civilian population throughout the municipality. The creation of an atmosphere of fear in Prijedor culminated in the agreement amongst members of the Prijedor crisis staff to establish the Omarska, Karatom and Trnopolje camps. The trial chamber has found that killings occurred frequently in the camps. There can be no reasonable doubt that a number of massacres were committed inter alia in room 3 of the Karatom camp on or about 24 July 1992. In late July 1992, over 100 people were killed in the Omarska camp, and approximately 120 people were taken on buses from Omarska on 5 August 1992 and killed. On 21 August 1992, approximately 200 people on a deportation convoy escorted by members of the Prijedor Intervention Squad were killed on Mount Rasic by members of this platoon. In square brackets. For a better understanding, I stop for a moment and interrupt the summary of this judgment for the following reason. I have to recall, and we have to recall, that this massacre at Mount Rasic is identical with the one the accused in another case, Darko Mirtja pleaded guilty to the 24th of July 2003 as a direct perpetrator, having committed murder as a violation of the laws or a custom of war and inhumane acts at that time. End of this square brackets, and coming back to the summary of the judgment of the case against Dr. Stakić. It is to be emphasized that many more were killed during the attacks by the Bosnian Serb army on predominantly Bosnian Muslim villages and towns throughout the municipality of Prijedor, Kozarac, Hambarine, Biskani, Ljubija, to name a few, and several massacres of Muslims took place additionally. The trial chamber has found that, calculated with the principle in dubio pro reo in mind, more than 1,500 killings occurred, and has been able to identify by name 486 names of victims. Rapes and sexual assaults were committed in the camps, and the thousands of persons detained were subjected to inhumane and degrading treatment, including routine beatings and torture. Detainees lived in unhygienic conditions and were given little more than a subsistence diet. Bosnian Muslims who had lived their whole lives in the municipality of Prijedor were expelled from their homes and deported in huge numbers, often on convoys organized and supervised by the Serb authorities from Prijedor. The trial chamber had evidence from many witnesses who were forced to flee the territory of the municipality of Prijedor in 1992, mostly to Travnik or Croatia, to escape Serb-controlled territory. The exodus of the mainly non-Serb population from Prijedor started as early as 1991, but accelerated considerably in the run-up of the takeover and reached its peak in the months after the takeover. More than 20,000 persons, calculated conservatively, 20,000 persons became victims of this campaign of deportation. Most people traveled on one of the daily convoys of buses and trucks leaving the territory. The houses of non-Serbs were marked for destruction and in many cases were actually destroyed along with mosques and Catholic churches. The trial chamber does not wish to reduce the victims to mere numbers and statistics. The victims were human beings, men and women with different backgrounds, histories and personalities. As it is impossible to reconstruct all their fates, the chamber has selected 3 of these individuals to highlight the core issues in this case: the fate of the late Professor Muhammad Stakić and the fates of witnesses X and Nermin Karadzic. As regards now the central question of this case, whether Dr. Stakić is to be held responsible for the crimes described in the factual findings, the trial chamber has answered this question in the affirmative. The trial chamber finds that the motive of liability described as co-perpetratorship, a form of committing under Article 7.1 of the statute, best characterizes Dr. Stakić's participation in crimes committed in Prijedor in 1992. It has not been found necessary to resort to the judicial formula of joint criminal enterprise. For co-perpetration, it is essential to prove the existence of an agreement or silent consent, to reach a common goal by coordinated cooperation with joint control over the criminal conduct. The co-perpetrator must have acted in the awareness of the substantial likelihood that crimes would occur and must have been aware that his role was essential for the achievement of the common goal. The trial chamber is satisfied that between January 1991 and September 1992, Dr. Stakić held the following superior positions and was the leading political figure in the Municipality of Prijedor in 1992. From the 4th of January 1991, he served as the elected Vice President of the Municipal Assembly of Prijedor under Professor Muhammad Cihajic, the legally elected President. On the 11th September 1991, the SDS in Prijedor established a municipal board and Dr. Stakić served as Vice President of the board. As of the 7th of January 1992, he was elected President of the self-proclaimed Assembly of the Serbian people of the Municipality of Prijedor. After the takeover, on the 30th April 1992, Dr. Stakić rose to prominence within the municipality, acting as President of the Municipal Assembly after the forced removal of Professor Muhammad Cihajic from that post. He simultaneously assumed the position of President of the Prijedor Municipal People's Defense Council. As of May 1992, he served as President of the Prijedor Municipal Crisis Staff, later renamed War Presidency. As of 24 July 1992, until the end of the period covered by the indictment, he again exercised the functions of President of the Municipal Assembly of Prijedor. Dr. Stakić's associates included the authorities of the self-proclaimed Assembly of the Serbian people of the Municipality of Prijedor, the SDS, the Prijedor Crisis Staff, the Territorial Defense, and the police and military. In particular, Dr. Stakić acted together with the Chief of Police, Simo Deljača, prominent members of the military such as Colonel Vladimir Arsic and Major Seljaja, the President of the Executive Committee of the Prijedor Municipality, Dr. Milan Kovačević, and the Commander both of the Municipal Territorial Defense Staff and Ternopolje Camp, Slobodan Kruzovic. With the establishment of the self-proclaimed Assembly of the Serbian people on the 7th of January 1992, the common goal of creating a Serbian municipality took tangible form. The common goal on the Prijedor level found its vibrant expression in Radovan Karadžic's 6 strategic goals of the Bosnian Serb leadership in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which included as the first goal the separation of Serbs from, quote, the other two national communities, end of quote. Interesting enough, by the time Karadzic had set out these objectives, preparations were already underway for the fulfillment of the first goal in the municipality of Prijedor. On the 29th of April 1992, at a meeting convened by Dr. Stakić, the final agreement was made amongst those willing to participate, in particular the police and armed Serbs, that power should be taken over in Prijedor municipality that night. This was the trigger and the first in a series of agreements necessary to achieve the common goal. No formal agreement was necessary, and all participants were aware of where the decision to take over power would lead. The takeover on the 30th of April 1992 was a culmination of months of planning by the SDS, which at that time was already cooperating with the police to boost security forces in the municipality in anticipation of the coup d'etat. After the takeover, Dr. Stakić and other SDS leaders assumed the central positions in the municipal government, and Muslims and Kurd politicians who had been legally elected were forcibly removed. Other leading SDS members were installed in strategic positions throughout the municipality. Simo Djelača became chief of police. After the takeover, the Serb leadership sought to achieve a state of readiness for war in the municipality of Prijedor. The Prijedor crisis staff started to impose restrictions on the non-Serb residents of Prijedor. The creation of a coercive environment for the non-Serb residents of Prijedor municipality is consistent with the co-perpetrators' objective of consolidating Serb power in the municipality by forcing non-Serbs to flee or to be deported, thereby forcibly changing fundamentally the ethnic balance in the municipality. A propaganda campaign helped to polarize the Prijedor population along ethnic lines and heated the atmosphere of fear. Dr. Stakić made a number of media appearances during summer 1999, instilling the inter-ethnic suspicion. The media became a propaganda tool of Serb authorities. In a speech reported in Kozarski Vjesnik, a newspaper serving as a voice of the Serb authorities at that time, Dr. Stakić proclaimed, quote, "Now we have reached a state in which the Serbs alone are drawing the borders of their new state." End of quote. This is also demonstrated by the fact that the official Gazette of Prijedor Municipality of 20 May 1992 started explicitly with a Year 1 edition. Apparently, from the point of view of the new self-proclaimed authorities, a new Serbian age had dawned in the municipality of Prijedor.